that, quote, "It goes without saying that none of the gruesome, disordered events described in Exodus ever took place." Okay, without saying, none. A slam dunk. Next, page 103, all the Mosaic myths can be safely and easily discarded. Well, maybe they can be, but not easily. There are a lot of very thoughtful people who have spent years of their lives looking at it and trying to figure out what's going on there. On page 104, next page, all 5 books of Moses are an ill-carpentered fiction. Now, a lot of pronouncements like that were made back in the 19th century, particularly the late 19th century. But again and again, biblical accounts considered mythical have gained new archaeological support and respect. You know, scholars at one point back in the 19th century said that the Hittites described in the Bible did not exist, nor did rulers such as Belshazzar of Babylon or Sargon of Assyria. And of course, archaeologists now have recorded all those civilizations, those reigns. There have been lots of brilliant people who have spent their lifetime studying those writings that you so readily dismiss. For instance, Robert Wilson, he knew 26 ancient languages and dialects. He could read just about all that remains from the ancient Near East. And he was impressed with the accuracy of those accounts that you so readily discard. You remind me, I admire your speaking and writing, you remind me of a character in the great movie, I hope many of us have seen it, The Princess Bride. There's a character, Vizzini. He's so smart that he says, "Have you ever heard of Plato, Aristotle, Socrates? Morons!" Well, you're a little too quick to dismiss some of these folks from the infancy of the human race. You know, great theologians, great historians, and sure, I mean, of course we know more about science and medicine and technology and lots of other things than people used to, but are we wiser than Socrates? Are we wiser than Isaiah? You write on page 160, "One knew, of course, that the whole racket of American evangelism was just that, a heartless con." You know that everything in American evangelism is a heartless con, a racket? I've been a reporter over the past 20 years. I've reported stories from around the country of people who, well, maybe or maybe not they're heartless, but they're evidently very stupid because they've spent their time in a racket that's yielded them no money. I mean, you live in Washington. You could easily visit some of these racketeers. You could drive for an hour or so north to Harford County, Maryland. It's north of Baltimore, just west of the Susquehanna. It's a land of forested rolling hills, leafy neighborhoods, small towns. They're, you know, playing a losing game of tug of war with the strip shopping centers and the malls and the fast food eateries and the housing developments. So it's pretty typical, sort of exurban area in some ways, but there's one small church in that county that I've gotten to know pretty well. Mount Zion has at least 30 families in it who have adopted kids, often hard-to-place kids. You could visit the home. It's easy. I'll be glad to arrange it for you. You could visit the home of one family, the Coonies. They own what was a 3-bedroom split level at the end of a cul-de-sac, nothing fancy, but now it has 7 bedrooms because the Coonies have adopted 9 kids. And most of those kids have some kind of mental or physical handicap. There's one who's 19, he has autism and mild mental retardation, severe bipolar disorder. There's one who was 16 and was set fire. He was born in Ghana and set fire there 10 years ago. She has daunting medical needs, but Terry Cooney said God was so clear. I mean, that's her racket, evidently, to take care of these kids. They have a 14-year-old Stephen who weighed only 2 pounds when he was born. He was born with cerebral palsy, and the Coonies adopted him. Their 11-year-old Isaac was the 6th child of a drug-addicted prostitute. They adopted him, and in every case they did it because of their Christian beliefs. So, does religion poison everything? You know, there's no evidence for religion at all. Well, there's some evidence of what Christianity did in their lives, that they do this. And the Coonies could show you around, you know, other people who are involved with this heartless con, this racket. There's another friend of mine in Mount Zion Church named Benedict Schwartz. He's the CEO of a software company, but he's left that now for, well, he's moving to Africa next month. He's already adopted a daughter. He wants to save some AIDS orphans in Africa. He began praying with a group of Mount Zion members about whether the church should found an orphan's home in Africa. And there were some folks who wanted the sanctuary to get air conditioning first, but the pastor agreed with Benedict that helping people in Africa was a higher priority. Now, 2 summers ago, my wife and I visited the outcome of that discussion. It's called the Children of Zion Home. It's in Namibia. We met the 50 children who live there. Most of them have lost at least one parent to AIDS. There are several, including, well, one boy who was living in a tire who were rescued from slavery. There were 2 deaf boys who had lived in the streets. There were 11 children, last count, who are known to carry the HIV virus. that orphanage would not exist except for Christian belief. Now, next month my wife and I will be back in Africa visiting another orphanage. This is the one that Benedict is moving to Africa to build in Zambia. And that's what one church has done. On the cover of this issue of World, this is a photo of a child that my wife and I met at a Christian work in South Africa. You could look at this kid and you could say, well, he's getting some food and, it's to my knowledge, it wasn't poisonous food. He didn't drop dead. Tell him that religion poisons everything. You don't have to go to South Africa to see that. I mean, you live in Northwest Washington. You write books with this absolutist, you could almost call it a sort of totalitarian fundamentalist rhetoric in some ways of, hey, everything is exactly, I know everything about this and I know it's all a con. All you have to do is go a few miles to poverty-stricken Southeast Washington. You could visit, for example, the Children of Mine program in Anacostia. I've been there a few times. Hannah Hawkins she's invested 2 decades. She invested 2 decades in this. It's an after-school program. Kids go there. And she said that without Jesus, you're empty. You're just out to sea floating. You don't know where to go. And she gives her life for those kids. And there are efforts like this all around this country. I'm glad you're a citizen. I hope you get a chance to see some of these. If there are folks in the audience here who believe that religion poisons everything, which is what Christopher wants to tell us, you don't have to go to Maryland or Washington to see differently. I've driven down I-35 and visited with Freddie Garcia in his San Antonio home. He used to be an addict, and he was a hater of white non-Hispanics. Then he became a Christian and started this program called Victory Outreach. He's led hundreds of people out of drug abuse. He counsels folks of all skin colors. You can't tell me that religion poisons everything. There are dozens of ex-addicts. I've interviewed them. They've told me that Christianity fought the poison that almost killed them. Or you or anyone here, you could drive east on 290 to Houston to visit the youth home that Kurt and Shelley Williams set up. These are also people I admire. They've helped to transform the lives of hundreds of teenagers who are heading into drugs and crime. They say, quote, we are unapologetically a Christ-based program. Or anyone here can drive up I-35. You can drive to Dallas. You can meet Christians who have set up community centers and former crack house. Tell them that religion poisons everything. Or tell that, I won't give you the whole tour, but, tell that to a gymnast in Indianapolis, a guy named Tim Street, lots of others there. Or met a paraplegic weightlifter in Philadelphia named Nemo Cologne. Tell him that religion poisons everything. Religion saved his life. Tell it to a pastor named John Piper in Minneapolis. He and his congregation work with Hmong and Somali refugees there. Hey, this is a great country, Christopher. You're a citizen now. Go see it. And you can reply that you've seen terrible things done for religious reasons. I believe you. I've seen terrible things done too. There are lots of religious things that poison some things. And maybe you'll tell me the subtitle was put there by your publisher over your objections, that you really don't believe that religion poisons everything. Well, we'd be making progress, but, I don't know. I won't go on. The history of Christian poverty fighting in America. Before you say that religion poisons everything, okay, take the metro from your home, go over to the Library of Congress, read there about a fellow named Charles Brace. This was a guy in the mid-19th century. He was motivated by his Christian beliefs. He walked the streets of New York City and wanted to gain a personal understanding of the problems that orphans face there. And over a 40-year period, he built lodging houses in New York City that provided shelter to tens of thousands of abandoned kids. He placed 91,000 of them in adoptive homes over a 40-year period. I'll tell you, one of the best days I've ever spent in research was at the Chicago Historical Society. I just spent a day reading the journals of a woman named Helen Mercy Woods. Again, motivated by her Christian beliefs, from 1881 to 1903, she ran a shelter in Chicago for pregnant and unmarried women. And you just read these journals. Month after month, she's giving attention to these women who had been discarded by their boyfriends or parents or anyone, and she helped them rejoice as their babies were born, and she helped some of them to get married, others to place their kids for adoption, others to get jobs. I could mention hundreds of more. I've written about this, but they weren't an evangelical racket. Their Christian beliefs actually helped them to understand that there were a lot more things more important than money. There's another sector of American history. You mentioned the separation of powers. A lot of that is because of the Christian understanding early in American history that, in fact, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So you don't want to concentrate power. It's very different than Islam, which believes in concentrating power in caliphs, who are the religious and military and political heads. The whole idea in America, coming out of this Christian idea of sin and lots of sin to go around, was that you spread it around. You don't